reason that I'm here is because the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under me.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. This is episode 236. And yes, the intro music hits a little bit differently on this day as Ange Postecoglou has been sacked by Tottenham Hotspur, as has Robert Vilahamn. We've got a lot to talk about on the podcast today. Here to do it is Caroline. She's at CG Stefko. Caroline, are we going to get through this?
We're going to try our best, and that is all I can, offer today. It's been a wild week.
Yeah, it's been a wild week. It's been a wild 48 hours. I know Todd is excited to talk about it all as well. He is at the Todd Father. What is up, TC?
Any day, sir, any day that you can have a conversation about the making of a Tottenham Hotspur legend like Ange Postecoglou. It's pretty darn cool. He will forever live in the lore of this club. Gone too soon, if you ask certain few members of the fan base and the team, which we'll come on to. But, it's never a bad day. Some might call it a good fucking day to chat with your mates about what's next for your favorite football club. So that's where we are.
It is where we are. We've got a lot to get into, obviously. It's, all jokes aside about the intro music, that's probably the last time we'll hear that version of it. Because on Friday, Spurs finally decided after weeks after winning their first trophy in 17 years to sack Ange Postecoglou after 2 seasons at the club. The Australian, led them to their first trophy in 17 years. And then about 17 days later is out of a job. And we all know the reasons why. And I guess, that's kind of where we should start, is why this happened, because of the Premier League form. And I guess let's just start off with how we're feeling about it, because I know I think the universal Spurs contingent of supporters and followers are I think fairly divided on this move. There's a lot of people who think this is asinine, and how do you sack a coach after what he did this season? And then there's others that say, of course you have to sack a coach after what he did this season, because they finished 17th in the Premier League. So Caroline, where are you on this spectrum? I know, it's not a clear cut yes or no answer for anyone. So let's start with you and let us know where you're at.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a clear cut thing to me either. I feel like one moment I'm of one mind, the next moment I'm of the next. I think really I was just surprised that the club made the decision knowing there was going to be so much fallout. Because I think that really was what was the biggest concern for me. Like, there have been obviously times this season where the fan base was super divided, and this is certainly not helping. So that doesn't feel great. At the same time, I understand the reasoning behind the decision. I don't disagree with it. I don't totally agree with it either. I don't know. I feel very torn about it because I do think it's difficult to, as a club, kind of turn your back on the person who had started to change the perception of the club from the outside, which is something that obviously has been frustrating to all of us for a long time. I personally did not have the same kind of emotional connection to Ange himself as I think a lot of people did. I was kind of more just removed from all of that. So I don't really feel sad about it per se. I think for me, it's more just so not looking forward to the long summer of speculation and regrets, and just knowing that whoever the new manager is going to be comes in with obviously not the trophy drought kind of monkey on his back, but he's got another kind of pressure coming. So it's going to be difficult no matter what.
See, I separate from you a little bit on that, just because I think the pressure for me is not going to be on the next manager as much as it's on Daniel Levy to pick the right manager. Todd, I know you're way more on the side of how did this happen? Why did this happen? Than I think either Caroline or I am. What was your thought when you saw this news come across on Friday?
I was fucking gut punched, dude. It was heartbroken. It's my biggest issue with Tottenham Hotspur is that the entire time that I followed this club, it feels like we can never get any legitimate momentum going. We have all these great pieces and all these great players, and we can't always put them together. Do you remember like how many times on this podcast we lamented not being able to see Desk play at their full potential, right? I feel like every time we get a little bit of momentum going, right? Oh, hey, we're good enough to go to a UCL final, and COVID happens. And, oh, hey, we've got a cup final against Man City and the best manager in the world possible to beat him in that cup final. And we sack him 6 days before the actual event. And then we go through this crazy process where we try to make the most out of these great managers, and they all say the same thing, which is Tottenham is broken from the inside. It has nothing to do with the players. Until you fix what's going on inside of Tottenham, this is always going to be what you're going to get. And then we bring in a guy that is the antithesis of this, a guy that's comfortable bringing through young players, a guy that's the best man manager in the world, arguably. And yes, I said it. The guy that is going to galvanize the team around an ideal, and we can build on that. And that's who they brought in. And that's what he did. And in his first season, he got fifth, despite the fact that we lost Harry Kane, the club's greatest goal scorer ever. And then in the second season, he won despite the league form because of crazy amounts of injuries, primarily to key pieces throughout the season. Again, going back to the lack of momentum thing. Like every time we got somebody back, another key piece would get hurt. He still, despite all of that, won our first European trophy in 41 years. And our bottom line focused manager or chairman saw it fit, and the board saw it fit to unanimously send this guy packing. My issue more than anything else is that what this says to the fans is that it used to be about glory and now it's about brand.
I'm really surprised that I didn't like copy and paste some of my notes into what you just said, because a lot of it is in there. I'm really glad you used the word momentum, first of all, because that is, I think, the most overwhelming feeling that I have through all of this is that momentum is being thwarted here by doing this. And that's a hard thing for anyone to take. And I think a lot of people can relate to it, at least. Anytime, momentum, I think, is a thing in a lot of sports, and it's also one of those discussions that's been kind of overwhelmed a lot by conversations about analytics and things like that. And I'm not an anti-data person at all. Like, I want the data, I want the analytics, I want the information, as much information as I can have. I want it, but momentum is something too, and especially that's the case when you're talking about European football clubs like this. And I think that momentum is something that can accrue and can build, and you can start to get a snowball rolling down the hill. Everything that Ange accomplished in winning that trophy gave this club so much momentum, and to kind of pull the tablecloth out from that is a little bit of a gut punch, and it's hard to take. When I said that the next person is not going to have as much pressure on him, I firmly believe that because of the fact that trophy has been won. If that trophy had not been won, all the pressure will be on the next guy to get that trophy under this club's belt. And now that is out of the way, which is really great. At the same time, I do think the other thing you're saying there, Todd, is completely true. We've arrived at a situation in world football, and specifically, I think, in the Premier League, because the Premier League is such a behemoth and such a money-making giant, where winning a trophy like the Europa League or like the League Cup, if they would have done that under Jose or someone else, that doesn't matter as much as your league position, because your league position is what sustains you. You have to maintain a high league position, because not only is it going to accrue more dollars for your bank account as a club, but it's going to keep you in that position. Being in the position is all that matters. And at the same time, I think it's important to realize sometimes bad teams win trophies. And I don't think Tottenham were a good team this year, and they still won a trophy. Like, that is something we need to recognize. Overall, they were not a good team. They had a very good cup run and won a trophy. They finished 17th in the Premier League. Like that has to be.
Yeah, but it can't be overstated. And what I mean by that is they had a positive goal differential until the last league game of the season. Like this team,
it was weird. Don't get me wrong.
Well, and the reason why it was weird is because I don't think it was a true reflection of who we were as a team because of how many injuries we had. Mm-hmm. And the approach that Ange took down the stretch was for glory. And that's the difference maker. I think ultimately there's no way that Daniel Levy could have signed off on this except for to say, well, you're gone anyway, so do whatever you're going to do, basically. Unless you get top 5 or Champions League. And that's the other thing. All Daniel Levy really gives a fuck about is Champions League football. And Ange got him Champions League football. So that's another reason why it's like he did it unconventionally, but there's no way that you can sit here and convince me that next year, if we had kept Ange, that we would have a similar league table finish. We just wouldn't.
I think you're right about that. I also think there's no guarantee that it would have gotten remarkably better without an influx.
There's no guarantee for anything.
No,
that's kind of where I want to go with the conversation because I think I feel a lot less cynical than a lot of Spurs fans do regarding, I guess, like the motivations of this decision. Because I do think ultimately it came down to sporting concerns. And I think that they did not have faith that Ange was going to be able to balance multiple competitions, improve our position in the league next season to a noticeable extent. So from that perspective, that's where I understand it and where I honestly had the same concerns about, the sustainability of playing style that we had seen early on in Ange's tenure. I mean, we know it wasn't sustainable. Like we literally saw the proof both seasons. So I kind of feel like obviously it's a huge gamble to make this change after he helped us win a European trophy because, there's the emotional component, which also can't be overlooked. I know we're going to talk about the players in a minute, and that really is a massive factor. But ultimately, if they think they're going to be able to find another manager who can, juggle those different competition responsibilities, then they had to make the call.
I mean, I don't disagree. And I guess that, I appreciate the measured approach on that from a sporting decision standpoint. It kind of removes the emotion from it a little bit. I value that because I think a lot of the backing that Ange is getting going into next season is based off of the emotion that he helped us feel on that night in Bilbao. And the way that he stuck up for this team and for the supporters despite the shit league form, and the way that he didn't throw his players under the bus, in a way that when somebody got out of line in the media, he came to him and said, you call me what you want, but I'm not a clown, right? There's a line, you do your job, but know where it is. And I have respect for a man who sets boundaries the way that Ange Postecoglou set boundaries, and a man that has the type of integrity that Ange Postecoglou has, and did things the way that he did. I think that that's the biggest thing, is that he's a man that you want to play for. And in a world of Contes and Mourinhos, we had a fucking Ange Postecoglou. And it's really sad now that identity that we could have built behind the back of, we were thinking about, oh man, we got a legitimate shot at the UEFA Super Cup. Let's go. And now it's God, I hope we don't get fucking blown out and this new manager doesn't shit the bed, whoever the fuck it is. And that wouldn't happen if we still had Ange. And it's you don't play the game for preseason trophies, but I mean, still the momentum piece, what we could be, I feel is being sacrificed by what we can prove we are on paper.
And that's going to be the question, is can they prove it? And I think that's the problem I have with just pointing to the trophy, which I want to do. I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of the emotional side of it. We're all holding up mugs here with Sonny holding the trophy. That's what we want. We want trophies. I think the way you sustainably win trophies is you don't finish in places like 17th. You be better. It is.
No. Hear me out, though. That's not what Tottenham does. The last times that we won trophies, we finished 11th and 8th and 10th and 9th. The thing is that we're mid-table when we win cups.
But is that an existence you want, really?
Let me ask you a question. Do you want an existence where you battle for Champions League football year in and year out, but in the years that you have deep cup runs, you finish out of Europe? And I look at that and I go, well, if I'm winning cups, if I'm brought home over the course of the next 5 years, I bring home an FA Cup, I bring home another Europa League, and I bring home a League Cup. Okay? But my league finishes are all over the board like we just talked about. Tottenham Hotspur fans will not give a fuck. We'll be stoked out of our mind at all of that silverware we're drowning in.
If that
and that's
happens,
that's what we want, but that's not what the club wants, and there's the disconnect.
But here's my thing though, Todd. If that happens over the course of the next 5 years, if those three trophies are won, it's probably done with 3 different managers over those 5 years. Like that's the thing.
And that's just wildly unacceptable to me. And I think that, and I want to make this point because it's something that I've been stewing on. I think it has to do with my American bias. And I think the reason why I say that is, well, fair. But I think for this specific point, what I want to say is that we grew up with these iconic coaches in American sports that built dynasties over decades. I mean, guys like Belichick or Vince Lombardi or Mike Tomlin even, right? Like these guys that are synonymous with the club. And that's how you build a culture of success. And that's how you breed a culture of winning. And so these are the things that we look to emulate. And it's like, somebody wants to talk to a logger about his job and they don't want to have a conversation when he's made 4 or 5 cuts into the tree. They want to talk about it when the tree's fallen. And the thing is that they're not there for all the work that goes in on what's happening. And so as I'm watching Ange hack down this tree of fucking mediocrity at Tottenham, it kills me that when he finally fell the tree, Daniel Levy was like, "You just made a fucking mess all over my yard. Get out of here." And it's like, okay, well then let's start all over again and hire a new guy. Fuck.
Can I say something perhaps controversial then?
I beg of you to, please.
Because and this is something I've been stewing on, over the last week or so, is I feel very nervous about the idea of expecting that to be what happens every season, that we win a trophy and just kind of forget about the league. And which, by the way, there's a big difference between a trophy in 9th place and a trophy in 17th place. Like
100%. It's never happened before.
And the problem for me is that, I also view sports in a very emotional American kind of lens. But for me, that means I want to enjoy watching my team week in and week out. I want to see, good performances. And if I'm totally 100% honest, the way we won the Europa League was not beautiful football. The final itself, I was a nervous wreck because we were defending almost the entire game. Like, that's not necessarily the way I want to see our team play. And, like I said, I don't think Ange had the capacity to sustain attacking football over an entire season. So that's just kind of why I got to that point.
And you're talking about, but you're talking about the appeal of Ange too, though. There, Caroline. You're talking about the appeal of Ange is the attacking football that we saw,
but we hadn't been seeing it,
right?
Well, hold on. I want to point something out. And that is that you're correct, Caroline. The way that we won the Europa League was god awful. The way that we actually won that match, the Europa League final, was the jammiest goal you could possibly ask for.
Which I am so glad it happened. Don't get me wrong.
Exactly.
But can we do it again next year? I don't think so.
No. But so hold on. What I want to say is that I think 17th is a misnomer because of all of the injuries that we have. I think the way that we had to play in that final is a misnomer because of the fact that we had no Madison and no Kulusevski and nobody else. The fucking cupboard was bare for a 10 at Tottenham Hotspur during that match. That's one. Second thing is we already beat United 3 times that year, playing in 3 different ways. And so Ange kind of looked at, well, what are we going to do different? What gives us the best chance of winning this game, this cup final? And he did it, and we executed it to perfection. My issue is that in the past, we haven't had this. Pochettino didn't have a closing philosophy. He had a play your ass off philosophy. Mourinho had a closing philosophy, how to win the big game, but we didn't let him coach it. Fucking Conte is the season manager and struggles in multiple competitions. We know this. And then the other folks that we had parade through there were doing the best they can. We've seen how it worked out for Nuno. And now we're sitting here looking at Ange, a serial fucking winner, someone who wins constantly and calls his shots. And we're like, no. That's not how we do things here. I look at that and I go, the sustainable philosophy for attacking football kind of requires attacking players in order to do that. All of ours got injured throughout the year. Daniel Levy did not spend on Premier League or European-ready players in the summer. Our wage structure is like fifth bottom. We're paying half of the amount of our percentage of profit, which is substantially more, to our players in wages than, say, Aston Villa, which that's not a bad example. They're going broke. But the point is that our wage structure is pitiful. Everything is based off of bonuses and incentives. And because of that, we are cutting off our nose to spite our face when it comes to building and winning culture behind a guy like Ange Postecoglou, who's known for attacking football. You got to give him the players in order to play that football consistently, Kaz. And that's what we didn't get. So we're looking around going, hey, how come your second and third team aren't executing this front foot football system as well as our first team is? And it's like, well, because they're not as good at players. And if you get me players that can fucking do this, then I'll show you what's up. And that's why I think Ange Postecoglou ultimately, when he gets like a proper big job, yeah, I said it. When he gets a proper big job and somebody will actually pay to back him, that he's going to be wildly successful in Europe.
So I think that there is a combination of all of those things that are like the right, the right key that fits in the keyhole for what everything that went down over the last 2 seasons. Because you're right, Ange was not backed with Premier League ready players this season. I also think there's an argument to be made, and I've said this a number of times, that the injuries are partially self-inflicted because of the way that they continued to press and play without the bodies to be able to do it. There was no adaptation there. And the thing that still stands out to me more than anything through all of this.
But there was adaptation. I just want to say that.
No. Here's the thing. There was adaptation in the cup run. There was not adaptation in the Premier League. And there was
adaptation in the League Cup. There was adaptation in the FA Cup. There was adaptation in a couple of league matches with the bigger squads, i.e., Man City, right? But like I understand what you're saying, but the philosophy is the same. Like Ange literally threw next man up until he had no men up. Like that's not on Ange. Daniel Levy knew his philosophy. He's known it for 2 years, had 3 windows to back the man properly for this campaign, and we didn't get that. And so now we're looking at Ange going, your playing style is not sustainable. And he's like, dude, you've got 17-year-old fucking kids starting in the Premier League because you didn't give me horses to run this race.
They are quite talented 17-years, though.
You're not wrong. They're still 17.
I just feel there were definitely times in the season where he could have been getting more out of the, shall we call them, B team. And we had seen it, earlier in the season that he had. So that was where I started to have concerns was, okay, why is the B team suddenly falling off now? Something's going on.
Well, and all of this is related to the conversation we're having. But to me, the thing that stands out the most is what Ange said in the build up to and after the Europa League final, in that there was a decision made to prioritize that cup run over the Premier League. That exact decision was cited as a reason for his sacking in the statement from the club. As I read here, they cite some of the numbers. After the positive start to the 23-24 Premier League season, we recorded just 78 points from our last 66 Premier League games. This culminated in the worst ever Premier League finish last season. And here's the quote: at times there were extenuating circumstances, injury, and then a decision to prioritize our European campaign. Now, they say a decision to prioritize our European campaign, and they are citing it as an extenuating circumstance. Whose decision was this, and how was it not a more cohesive decision? Was this Ange Postecoglou making a decision on his own and going rogue, or did he have the backing of the club to do this? it sure as hell sounds like it was Ange Postecoglou making that decision. Once he got through January, and we talked about this last week, but once he got through January and then through, once they got knocked out by Liverpool out of the League Cup final in early February, that's when the decision was quite obviously made based on the league form to say, fuck it to these league games. We're not going to try and win them. We're just going to put a team out there and play them out. I mean, we saw it in the final day against Brighton. And this is the part that's cited by the club to me that sticks out like a very, very sore thumb as to that's the reason that this all went down. Like injuries are one thing, but the decision to take those injuries and say, throw your hands up and say, well, the league is the league now, like that, I think is why this happened deep down.
Well, what I think is, and just kind of like as we're having this conversation and thinking back on the way that players have talked about things throughout, and the fact that directly after the final, Son, who's normally the most gracious and humble and praiseworthy, and someone who's ready to hand out praise to the people close to him, laid the Ange question after the match. They were like, "Oh, your manager's been through so much, and it's been really tough." And he goes, "Yeah, there was a lot of injuries. Things were crazy, but I'm just really proud of this team and the way that we stuck together." And I'm looking at that going, well, that's interesting. The way that they talked about everything around this match, about how like it was the video that Ange played before the match that really like galvanized them, and was the messaging around how they were doing things throughout the cup run that really mattered. The club saying that the league position is a big part of the reason why this happened is completely lines up with what we've heard before from prior managers about Daniel Levy's feelings about finishing top four versus, I mean, that's literally the reason why Mourinho got sacked. They had a big fight about how they were going to prioritize matches. Daniel wanted him to prioritize the team around the league games coming up because we still had a chance to get top four, and Mourinho wanted to win the League Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at that and you go, okay, that makes total sense.
And it's cited in their statement too. It is crucial that we are able to compete on multiple fronts and believe a change of approach will give us the strongest chance for the coming season and beyond. They want to compete everywhere. It doesn't mean they want to win everywhere. It means they want to be competitive everywhere. And that's kind of the statement that the club is making through this. The statement that Ange made was also quite one. Really, really beautiful statement, I thought, that he wrote. And Todd's feeling it. And this was really nice. Caroline, I know you don't have the attachment like many do to Ange, but this was a really nice touch. And the very end of it, we are forever connected. Audir es facere. He throws it. He to me, he got what this meant. That to dare is to do is what they did. And that's the part to me that like the emotional heartstrings really do tug on for this.
Yeah, I think really the big takeaway from the statement for me is that, what is that, fourth paragraph where he talks about laying foundations and his faith in the players, and that he knows they have more to prove. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really nice statement. And it's clear from like the way the players reacted to this that they really bought into his management and his philosophy, and that can't be overlooked. And I think it's a good thing if he's helped these players find that winning mentality, which we know has not always been ample at Tottenham. So yeah, thanks, Ange.
No, and he even said it, he told them consistently throughout that they would be the group that broke the curse, that they would be the group that got it over the line. And I don't know, Andrew, that I've ever seen in my time as a Tottenham fan the type of outpouring of emotion from the players for a departed manager.
Yeah.
Not even Pochettino.
I've got Sonny right here. Sonny made a post a couple of days ago on Instagram. It says, Gaffer, you've changed the trajectory of this club. You believed in yourself and us since day one and never wavered for a second, even when others did. He goes on to say, Ange Postecoglou, you are a Tottenham Hotspur legend forever. Thank you, mate. Very sweet tributes throughout, most of them on Instagram. I know, Caroline, you cited Pedro Porros, which was very, very nice as well. There was one notable person missing from all of the statements that I did not realize until right before we started recording. Todd pointed out that there has been no post as of this recording, which is happening late afternoon Pacific time on Sunday, from one Christian Romero. And I think that makes a lot of sense based on what we know about Cootie right now, because Cootie really tied himself to Ange in the aftermath of the Europa League final. And I have to guess that Cootie won't be around next season after this sacking. That's, I think, the one, I don't want to say guarantee, but that's the one thing that seems most clear to me about the squad itself, is that Cootie is all more than likely gone. After this, I think there were already rumblings, but this just kind of put that nail in the coffin for me, at least. And that's probably where it's going to be.
Heartbreaking.
It's not great.
And
it's not great.
I said this on Twitter. I said that this one thing is the greatest fallout from the Ange sacking, is the fact that Christian Romero, who has already been very critical of the club on multiple fronts, now sees the manager that really helped shape him into an everyday player in the Premier League. We're just going to call it what it is, because he was quite reckless before then, and he is not now. He still plays on an edge, but he's nowhere near the walking red card that he was his first little bit at Spurs. And a big part of that, and he said so, comes down to Ange.
Yeah. Despite the fact that the transfer window is open for another few days and then we'll close and then we'll reopen because of this weird summer, we're going to have time to talk about the fallout from a squad standpoint. I do want to talk about the next manager, because that's been something that over the last few days has been a big who knows. Thomas Frank is the hot name out there, and I think we can pretty much treat this conversation like it's going to be Thomas Frank, although Marco Silva's also out there. There could be other names. There could be wild card names that we don't know about. Let's start on Thomas Frank. If it is Thomas Frank, if it happens that Tuesday or even tomorrow, Monday, Spurs have made this happen, what's our reaction to that? How are we going to feel about Thomas Frank coming in and taking over this club?
You know, I don't have strong feelings about him as a manager. He's always seemed competent, likable, never heard a bad word about him, so that's nice. I think for me, really, it doesn't hugely matter who it is out of this sort of list of names that we've heard suggested. I think for the sake of my mental health, I'm trying to be less attached to managers going forward.
It's probably a good idea.
And also just kind of holding space for the idea that it could go well. You know, I think everyone's acting like the sky is falling, but we weren't like terribly keen on Ange when he joined, and you know, it didn't totally work out, but we did get a trophy. So, you know, stranger things can happen.
TC, any Thomas Frank thoughts?
Yeah, more than I care to admit.
Well, try, because we're doing a podcast. That's what we're supposed to do.
Fair enough. I've been sitting here trying to think about how I want to phrase this. Because anytime a Dane can get ahead in European football, I'm stoked for it. So shout to that. You ever had an Australian hot stone steak? Only had it a couple of times.
Okay, no, but I know what you're talking about.
So they bring out this like block of just like ridiculously hot stone, right? It's going to hold on to the heat for a little while. They bring you your steak and it is not cooked. And you got to yourself cut up this steak and put it on this hot stone and flip it how you want and do it the way that you can. It's kind of cool. It's a cool experience, but it also feels like I should be getting paid whatever the chef is making that night. But what I will say is it is absolutely delicious, especially it's usually served with like an A5 Wagyu, which is just insane. But it's kind of like we're going from that with Ange, right? If you leave it on the hot stone too long, it can burn really quick and it can be really shitty, right? If it's not just right, but if you get it just right, it's glorious. We're going from that to like an Outback steak. And it's fine. It's fucking fine. It's fine. It's never going to win any awards. but it's not like a roadside diner. You're not going to get sick off of it, right? Thomas Frank is fine. He's a good communicator. He's a fine coach. He's been in and around the Danish setup for a long time. And so, he's worked with guys like, Christian Eriksen coming up. So, I mean, he's a dude. But my issue with Thomas Frank and the one positive thing that I will say about him is that he fits Levy-nomics, right? He overperforms expectations and since he's got into the Premier League, has the highest percentage of overperforming his wage spend based off of league finish of any manager in the top flight. And so you look at that and you go, oh, wait a second. Okay, so you're the one you're my $20 chef, right? You're the guy who's going to come in and make me the best fucking top ramen I've ever had in my life. That's what I'm looking at from Thomas Frank, right? Like I don't know. It's going to be a hard sell. It's going to be a hard sell. Ange was magnanimous, and the way that the players talked about him, I think that's a big part of the reason why he got shown the door, is because he was a bigger character than Daniel Levy wanted to have at the club. He didn't want to have someone other than him have that much sway of public opinion about Tottenham Hotspur, and that fucking sucks.
But this is the man that hired Mourinho and Conte, who are extreme.
Yeah, but that was after a string of hiring, fucking Pochettinos and Tim Sherwoods, and you know what I mean. Like, if you look at the managers, and it's 18 months is the average tenure, right? And if you look at the manager, he also hired fucking Nuno and shout to Nuno, but whatever. He's like I've said it at the time. He's a Tesco Mourinho. And it's the same shit. He just doesn't do it as well. And, I'm not looking at Daniel Levy for anything when it comes to a right decision in hiring a manager at this point in time. All I'm hoping for is that the people that are making the Levy-nomic decisions pick the right one for the club. Because it's going to have to be, this is the Nuno hire for us right now. That's what we're looking at. It's somebody who plays a similar enough style to Ange so we can use virtually the same players and we don't have to overhaul the entire roster, right? And is a fine mid-table coach. He's not going to make any waves. It'll be fine, right? It's going to be fine.
Well, I'll say this.
But that's what we're talking about, dude. It's fine. It's going to be ninth. We're gonna hang out in Conference League places and go to fucking Kazakhstan. So, whatever.
If he's the next Nuno, I hope he lasts longer than 10 games. And Nuno finished 7th this year, not 9th. So I hope it works out as well for Nuno as it has, for Nottingham Forest and for Thomas Frank.
Wolves, he also got Wolves pretty close to relegation, right, when he went back. So that's
why he's not there anymore. That's how this works.
I see where you're at, but
the players are going to adapt. Like the player, I know what you're saying about the players and them being so magnanimous toward Ange. They're professionals. Like they're going to have a new boss in charge. The ones that are sticking around, and they'll kick on. Like that's what they have to do.
Well, and part of football is that you have to have the perfect magical combination of manager and players. Like I think we probably should acknowledge that the transfers are going to be just as important as the manager who comes in. There's a lot that goes into it. So I'm just trying to be open to the possibility that we're going to have a good season and I'm going to enjoy watching the team play. That's what I hope for.
Tell me, I appreciate that. And I do too. But tell me what Brentford's identity is. The plucky upstart, right? And the biggest criticism that we've heard of Tottenham Hotspur, just kind of in general, is we're the also rants, the not quite good enoughs, right? Why are you guys even mentioned in the Big Six? All of this. And I don't know how a Thomas Frank hire does anything to stem that tide of bad publicity washing over Daniel Levy from this decision.
Well, that's the thing I think that bothers me the most about all of this is we've for so long we hired Pochettino and we were going to try to be, this young upstart Southampton type of side. And then we tried, while we had Pochettino, we were trying to be like Brighton, or we were trying to be, we were trying to be that. And then for a little while there, we hired the Contes and Mourinho's, and we tried to be like more like United or Chelsea and go for it really. And now we're going to try and be Brentford. For a brief 2 seasons just now, we were being Tottenham Hotspur. And like, that's what I would like us to be. I would really like us to get back to being Tottenham Hotspur. Or I guess continue that, because we have been that the last handful of seasons, that chaotic mess that we all, love to flip on these microphones and talk about every week. Like, that is part of what the draw to this club is. So I don't want us to try to be Brentford. I get what you're saying. I don't want that. I'm not interested in that. No. I want us to be Tottenham.
And the one through line in all of these identity failures is the fact that we've never, ever paid for the players that are going to make those systems work long term.
Yeah. It comes down to structure, wage structure, which we talked about it.
This is exactly the point, going all the way back to Pochettino, talking about how he goes to the chairman and he says that my washing machine is broken, and he brings him back 2 dryers because they were on sale. It's the thing is we've never truly gotten what we need. And Levynomics now has us going to buy the players that are going to take less guaranteed money with a higher incentive and bet on themselves, i.e. a James Maddison, because Levy knows that statistically he's probably going to miss those incentives because of his playing time issues. Like, these are the players that we're getting. And until we actually back an approach, whatever we choose it to be, we're going to continually having to it's just going to feel like a fucking Daniel Levy merry-go-round, bro.
The one thing I will add is that, I had heard some Brentford fans talking about all of this, and a lot of them, I sort of took it to say that he was playing a much more attacking brand of football when they were in the championship. And it was only sort of the financial realities of moving up to the Premier League and not having the caliber of squad that forced him to, adapt. And, I know that sometimes we can feel down on certain members of our squad, but I think at a baseline, we do have a good squad. We know that we can get more out of them than we sometimes saw this season even. So if he's a manager who's good at, getting the most out of a squad, I feel like that could be a useful thing.
I agree. And I don't hate it. I also heard a Brentford manager or a Brentford fan say that, the guy's a legend at the club. He's probably like the biggest Brentford legend there is. It's something where they say he's a horses for courses kind of manager. Right, somebody who's willing to adapt to who he has, and he also knows how to handle personality. I mean, they did have Ivan Toney there for a hot minute, and and Muombo is another guy that seems to have a big personality as well, and he's gotten a tune out of him and helped him really develop. So, I think that we have some guys in our squad that Thomas Frank can do a lot of work with. Your manager is your figurehead. He's the synonymous with the identity of your club. And when you look at your Klopp at Liverpool and your Pep at Man City, or your Alex Ferguson at Man United, like, nobody remembers the guys who come after them, right? Like, it's tough to think about.
I mean, Arne Slot's doing okay.
Yeah,
he's not doing bad. He's not doing bad.
He's hanging in there. He's hanging in there with a medal around his neck.
Oh, it's kind of difficult to argue that he was given a position that was pretty lined up for success. So I'm happy for him. But I think that can be said about Ange too. I mean, Ange has set up this squad with a young base that can kick on. It's just a matter of who's the guy that's gonna be able to plug in and allow that to actually happen. Sure, and I guess that's really the thing here.
I'm not comparing. By the way, I'm not comparing Ange Postecoglou to Jurgen Klopp. There, that's like obviously not what I'm trying to do. I don't want to make it sound like that.
What I'm saying is, we had a personality as a manager. We had a figurehead as a manager that the team rallied behind and the fan base rallied behind. And it's going to take a lot from Thomas Frank to convey that same emotion in the fans, let alone the players.
If it's not Thomas Frank, if it's not Marco Silva, who we haven't really said boo about because there's not much to say, like it would be another one that's very Thomas Frank-esque. But there is another name out there, folks, that I'm going to continue to not beat the drum for, but just remind everyone that someone's out there shaking his little tail feather at Daniel Levy, and he happens to be the manager of the United States men's national team currently, and he happens to be a former Tottenham Hotspur manager. His name happens to be Mauricio Pochettino. If no one saw the quotes from Pochettino following the U.S. men's national team's latest loss, because it's their third straight defeat in friendlies, he's ruling it out. He's saying it's not happening. It's not feasible. He's saying there's no way he could return to Tottenham Hotspur right now because obviously he's got a job, and the financial implications of him leaving that job would just not make any sense. And of course, there's a World Cup on U.S. soil next season or next year, next summer. So why would he leave? But boy, is he doing a lot of runaround to make that statement, and a lot of fluffing of the club, not the club that he's currently managing. I find it weird, and I also find it fascinating from I want to stand back and watch this happen. But let me be clear. I do not want this to happen. I think it's a terrible, terrible, terrible idea to even think about bringing Mauricio Pochettino back to this club now or immediately after the World Cup, by the way, no matter who they hire in the short term. I just am pointing out, like, go read between the lines a little bit about what Mauricio Pochettino is saying. And I know some things can be lost in translation at times when it comes to Mauricio Pochettino, but he is really out there, like, making it clear that he wants this job and has wanted this job since he got fired from it. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that he would. I personally, this is conspiracy me coming out now. Like, I think if you gave Mauricio Pochettino the ability to snap his fingers and have never been hired by the United States and take the job right now, he would do it in an absolute.
Yeah, can I just say that to suggest he's been managing the U.S. is very generous. At no point have I felt like he has any control on the situation. Oh my God, it's a mess, which I'm going to witness in person on Tuesday, so that'll be fun.
Oh boy, yeah. That is fun. TC, am I crazy? Okay, fair enough.
There is another name out there.
You don't think he's shaking it a little for Daniel?
No, I think what he's saying is what he said consistently since she's left. I feel like I have unfinished business there, and I hope one day again I get the opportunity to come back and manage this club. He said that ad nauseum, so this just reinforces that. I think there is another name out there that we should be talking about. I hope we're talking about. Please, God, let us be talking about it. And that's Ollie Glasner from Crystal Palace. And you can bring Eze with you and Wharton if you like, and come to hang out, and it'll be a good time.
Okay, fair enough. Again, that's another one that for me is just like plug and play. Thomas Frank, Marco Silva, Ollie Glasner. All
I love a guy who's won Crystal Palace's first major trophy fucking ever. I love that. And I love a guy that's got a great relationship with Eze. So let's go.
I hear all of that. There were a lot of other changes this week at Spurs. Ones that I think we can touch on. Donna Maria Cullen has departed the club. That's a name that many people are familiar with, has been there for, gosh, I didn't actually get a chance to look this up, but I know it's been at least 10, 15 years. I think it's been longer.
It's like 20 years.
I think it's been 20 years. Yeah, she's been there a very long time. Scott Munn is also on the way out, not official yet, but he's going to be sacked. That's the part of all of this too, guys, that I'm very much like, okay, who's making the decisions? I know Daniel Levy is making all the decisions, and I know that he's for lack of a better term, he is the one stirring the drink, but who is actually making the football decisions? Because we've heard Paratici's name brought up a number of times, but know that he can't come in until, he's cleared legally to do so. We know Scott Munn is now on the way out. Johan Lange's name has been out there, but like we don't really know. It's the old, what is it exactly that you do here type of thing. So, like, all of these changes, we knew this was going to be a big summer of change for Tottenham Hotspur. I don't think we really fully grasped all of the changes that are happening and are still going to happen. So, I just think that that's something to note. Anything to say about Cullen or Munn or any of these names going forward?
I'm good riddance. To be fair, Donna Cullen was supposedly a PR guru, and we have some of the worst club fan relations that I can think of. They do a terrible job. It feels very corporate. It doesn't feel authentic in any way. Everything they do is very tone deaf and has been for a long time. I shouldn't say everything. The Tottenham Hotspur Foundation does good work. She's not responsible for that. But the Tottenham Hotspur Foundation does really good work. Outside of that, it's really, really, really cold and heartless. And there's been so many times where we as fans on this pod have been like, I want more from the club. I expected more from the club. I needed more from the club. And I think a lot of those failures fell at her feet. And so I'm kind of glad to see her on her way. As far as Scott Munn is concerned, I agree with you, Andrew. It's kind of like, what exactly would you say it is that you do here? So I think Paratici has been pulling the strings from behind the scenes. I've said that publicly, like straight up telenovela status, right?
Now it's your turn for the conspiracy, sir.
That's right. My tin hat is fully affixed. I'm saying that guy has been seen in and around the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium throughout. And what I've heard, and I don't know this to be true at all, what I've heard allegedly is that he was being paid as a consultant by another organization owned by the ENIC Consortium. And so it was an off-the-books, non-football related relationship.
Kind of like a mini retainer.
It's a retainer, exactly that.
Fair enough.
So I think that's been happening a long time. I think that there's going to be a seamless transition from him coming back. I think that the Johan has proven his value of scouting and bringing in young talent, which I really, really like. And I think then you added some of the Paratici dark arts in some of the senior markets, and we're doing big boy things again. But I don't fucking know. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. We are a rudderless ship at the current moment in time, and we'll fucking figure it out, I guess. I don't know.
Caroline, do you have a rudder to offer us?
No, because honestly, what do I always say? There are so many things we cannot and will never know about how things are run at the club. This is exactly why, even though I feel like I needed a mental break from actual games, I am so ready for the actual football to be back, because I want to actually have a concrete opinion on something and not just speculation. It drives me crazy.
I disagree. I need a break, and I'm playing more golf than I get to do during the season now because there's no games to watch. So I'm totally on board with that not happening. One thing we do know and did know last week and now know officially is that Ryan Mason is no longer a part of the setup at Tottenham Hotspur. He has left for the role at West Bromwich Albion. TC, you weren't with us last week when we touched on this, so I know you're a number one Ryan Mason guy, so I wanted to let you just have your quick say on Ryan Mason's departure.
Shout to a man who bleeds lily white and just a great person. Like, anybody that you talk to about Ryan Mason will tell you how much passion and dedication that guy oozes. And he kind of approaches coaching in a similar way that he approached playing, which is, I'm not the most skilled or the most gifted, but watch how much fucking heart I give to everything that I do. And that's 100% who he was. His career obviously cut way too short, way too soon. The fact that he was able to remake himself as a proper football coach and save this club in the way that he has on a couple of different occasions, I will be forever. And the fact that he got to go out on a trophy, I will forever be thankful for Ryan Mason at this club. And it wouldn't surprise me if one day we see him stalking our touchline as well. I think he's got that potential.
Fair enough. I think this is the portion of the program where I get to pat myself on the back because I said last week it's a little weird that the club, announced all of their departures and Ben Davis wasn't included in that. What do you guys think that means? Do you think that means they're just going to give him a really nice send off and sell him to Wrexham, or could he be back? And sure enough, as of this morning, Spurs have exercised a 1-year option for Ben Davis, which we heard about back when Sonny's option was exercised in like January or something. But Ben Davis is going to be with the club for yet another season, extended through the summer of 2026, just like Sonny. He's back. And again, I think I kind of called this. I think I kind of said, well, this makes a lot of sense, not only just from a veteran depth standpoint, because you got to have bodies if you're going to be playing in all these competitions, but also, those sweet homegrown numbers. Boy, does he help with that. And he does. And that's not to say that Ben Davis is simply here to make the books, but I also kind of hope Ben Davis is simply here to make the books, because I don't really need to see much more of Ben Davis on the pitch unless it's in an extreme extenuating circumstance, because I don't know that he's got it. He certainly didn't have it to play left back in Ange's system. He was relegated to simply being a left-sided center back. Now, if that changes, c'est la vie, but I don't see it changing. How do we feel about Ben Davis coming back, Caroline? Because I know we all love Ben Davis, but like it's getting to the point where, come on, what are we still doing here?
Well, we do love Ben Davis, and we thank him for his many years of service. I feel like I should be more excited about this than I actually am.
That's where I'm at. I'm like,
because,
really? Again?
Like if I'm thinking honestly and realistically, we have an example from this past season of what happens when the worst does happen with injuries and you have players playing who you weren't expecting to play. And I don't know, from his last few performances, I don't feel super confident about him being back out on the pitch. So it's a tough one, but at the same time, I can't really be upset about him having this sort of, security at this stage of his career, because he has given a lot to the club. But from a playing perspective, I don't know. And it makes me a little nervous that we did this before bringing in the manager to know if he's even going to be a good fit,
well,
realistically.
I value everything that both of you have said. I don't think that Ben Davies is fit to play left back in any system, let alone ours in the Premier League alone. I think Ben Davies is a left-sided center back and will be for the rest of his time. He's best served as a left-sided center back in a 3. Sometimes Thomas Frank likes to drop into a 3 and play wing backs. So that may be one reason. Another reason is because arguably the most valuable thing about Ben Davies is who Ben Davies is as a person and what he means to the young players on the team. And so we've got this young stud Czech center back that's coming in this summer and is going to need some vetting in whatever his first name is, Vuskovic. Mm-hmm. And I think that Ben Davies being able to kind of play mentor for him is going to be critical. And Ben Davies is Son's best friend. And that means Sonny, we get one more year of Sonny. Even if both of them are playing in a diminished role, I feel like that's good for the locker room. That's good for Tottenham Hotspur. Heung-min Son is Mr. Tottenham for our generation.
Oh, there's no question about that. And I do think there is something to be said about veteran leadership within a club. And it is needed, especially when there's going to be a new manager. Like who's going to bridge that gap between making sure that, the young and the old and everything kind of meshes together. That's kind of what we need to happen. And hopefully it will. That would be really, really great. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But Ben Davis, yeah, back. And I guess he's going to have to be a part of all the squads because, like, again, those homegrown numbers are really, really dire for this club. And that's why we're talking about so much change. Speaking of change on the women's side as well. And to me, at least, this was way more expected than the Ange news. But Robert Vilahamn, as of, in fact, this morning officially, it has been sacked by Spurs Women. Spurs Women will be looking for a new manager. We're not going to go into a Thomas Frank, Marco Silva, Mauricio Pochettino rabbit hole on this one because we just do not know what's next. But obviously, Vilahamn and Postecoglou charted kind of very similar courses over their time at Spurs. Both their 2 seasons, both had way more success in their first year than their second, bar the trophy for Ange, obviously. But the league positions were similar this year. Vilahamn does have, reaching the FA Cup final last year against Manchester United, the first ever victory against Arsenal to gloat about. And it really looked like there was going to be something. And then we reached this second season and it just hit a absolute pothole and things really got off on the wrong foot. Caroline, again, expected, but it also kind of sucks because I just don't know what else Robert Vilahamn was supposed to do with the squad that he was given.
Yeah, I do hear you. I think I had a little more concern about his tactics, especially towards the end of his tenure. It just was a really tough watch at times. And I think the big difference between him and Ange is that, while Ange kind of had the complete buy-in from his squad, you did not see that from the women's team. And of course, this is all conjecture because we're not there. We don't know what's being said or thought behind the scenes, but it's probably notable that we've yet to see any sort of farewell messages from the team to Robert. I think
it is early. I want to say, like, it just officially happened earlier today. So
yeah,
and we do know that Bethany England was a little busy this week.
She has
club captain. Yeah,
congrats to Beth.
Congrats to Beth, who got married this weekend, and I've seen all the photos and everything looks lovely. Yeah. I doubt she's too worried about putting out a statement about her manager being sacked. But yes, you're right about that.
I just think really it was a situation of things had just gone stale, and it is true the club has really let down the women's team in terms of investing in the squad. And I feel like there were some attempts made this season with some of the players we brought in that just didn't work out. And sometimes that happens. You think a player is going to be able to replace someone and they just can't. It turns out they can't make the leap to a higher league, for example, in some of those cases. But I feel like this needed to happen probably before the end of the season, to be quite honest. And that's really the only frustration here, is that it took so long after the season ending to finally get, clarity on his departure. But I'm hoping, like you said, we don't really have any links to prospective new coaches. The one that we had kind of heard about, Matt Beard, he took himself out of the ruling. So we don't know who it's going to be, but hopefully it gets sorted soon because, we've got, just like on the men's team, a lot of work to do with the squad. And it would be nice to get that started sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we did get a statement from Vilahamn in which he pointed out that, he's incredibly proud to have led the club for 2 seasons, sharing the special moments that I mentioned, 76,000 people at Wembley Stadium watching that FA Cup final last year in the defeat to United. And then the first time beating Arsenal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in front of that crowd. And that was a hell of a day for this club. But it is one of those things. And it's interesting, the thing you bring up with not really like having the squad to do it. To me, we talk a lot about on the men's side of things, and not just with Spurs, but with any club. The job of a manager for the most part is to coach the players. It's not to recruit and encourage the players to join. There's normally a director of football or a sporting director of some kind that is in charge of that. And we just know on the Spurs women's side of things that Robert has pretty much been doing it all, because all the players that were brought in, not all, but most of the players that were brought in over the last handful of seasons were former players of his from the Swedish league that just weren't getting the job done. And that's the part to me where I say, okay, do we want to invest in this squad, and do we want to have them actually kick on and do something, or do we want to just give somebody all this responsibility, and then when the ingredients aren't there to cook a great meal, we kick them out of the kitchen? That's the part where I'm just like, okay, is this kind of thing going to repeat itself, where the next person they bring in is also going to have all this responsibility to do the recruitment and to do, the signing and to do the coaching and to lead an entire squad out? Or can we get a little bit more structure? Now we just got done bitching and moaning about, we don't really know what the structure is on the men's side. Who's in charge on the women's side as well? Like it's a question to be asked. And I know that we've been praising the hire of Venai Venkatesham because of what he did at Arsenal women. I'm still hopeful And what other choice do we have but to be hopeful about the fact that he can hopefully bring some change to this situation? But until we see it, it's kind of a, we'll hope for it until we see it.
Well, and I think we had heard, many months ago that the club was wanting to bring in a sporting director for the women's team, and then it was just radio silence. I'm hoping that was just part of all the moving parts that we're seeing now across the club, and that it's going to get resolved now. But you're right. We need someone who's going to actually be leading recruitment, because we see on the men's side all the time, like, managers are involved in this process, because look at how many players in their farewell statements to Ange talked about his phone call to them to bring them to the club. But the manager should be like the closer of that deal, not the one instigating it. So
exactly.
Whoever the new manager is, they need to have actual support above them, so that they can, like you said, focus more on the tactics, on the game-to-game management, and just, sort of trying to address the fact that there is still a massive gap between us and where we want to be. So,
yeah, the statement from Andy Rogers, who is the managing director of Tottenham Hotspur Women, included, "Results and performances this season have not been to the level we would expect, and now is the right time to make a change." And to that, I would ask, what exactly is the level that you would expect? We know that Robert Vilahamn expected to be competing 2 seasons in for Champions League places, and instead they finished 11th out of 12 teams. But what does the club actually expect is what I want to know. I'm all for Robert setting that bar very high, and obviously he failed to get there. But what does the club actually want? What does the club want this to be? Do they want this team to be on the level of Arsenal women and Chelsea women and Manchester City women, or do they just want to hang around in the WSL and be present, I guess, for lack of a better term? That's kind of what I want to know.
Well, we really cannot afford to just be present anymore, because it's not just the team that's coming up, promoted this season. There are other teams below them that are very serious about, improving their women's team and being serious contenders. And they're going to keep getting promoted into the league, and we're not going to be able to sort of rest on our reputation, which is not great on the women's side, to be clear. But, we're going to have to actually get serious here. And I'm hoping we're going to see signs of intent soon.
Boy, do I hope so too. Do you guys want to talk kits, or do we want to punt that? Because my gosh,
I'm in.
You're in. You want to do this?
All I feel like it's a quick conversation with this kit.
It's a quick conversation for me. I know that much. Spurs did release their 2025-2026 home kit this week. If you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot, you can see it on the screen now. It is a training shirt. That's what it's going to be referred to. That's what it's already been referred to. It looks like a training shirt. It's very much fine, but actually I don't even know that I can go fine. It's a shirt, and it's the shirt that they're going to wear next year. That's kind of how I feel about it. I've felt this way about a lot of our home shirts over the years. Not all, but a lot. I would say I felt a little bit this way about last season's home shirt, and that shirt's going to go down in lore because they won a trophy in it on the men's side in the Europa League. And I still think it's just kind of an okay shirt. This one is worse than that, in my opinion. I just don't think it looks very good. Everyone knows, longtime listeners of the Depot know, I'm not a centered badge person. I think the sleeves, whatever they're trying to do with the color on the sleeves, is ridiculous, and it just makes it look silly. And obviously, I'm one that bitches and moans about the red AIA all the time. I'll just continue to say that we don't need red on our kit, because we know why we don't need red on our kit. But
well, then we need to get a different sponsor. We've had this conversation numerous times.
We have.
It is written in the contract that if it appears on white, it will always be in red. It has to do with the Chinese good luck correlation to the colors being red. And so that's fine. That's what it is. It's not fine, but as long as we have the sponsor, we are where we are. It looks like a kit of a Thomas Frank managed team.
Okay. Fair enough.
I honestly, I have so much beef, as I know Caroline does, with Nike and their kit manufacturing. I truly feel like they only make one good kit a year for Tottenham, and the other two are just like designs they need to get rid of.
I had managed to repress the fact that Germany had switched to Nike in the upcoming cycle. So, and now I'm remembering. So thank you for that disappointment, Todd. Yeah, like Nike, it's not innovative is usually how I feel. And I think that really comes through here. And the fact that we all feel like it looks like a training kit and not even really a Nike training kit either. Like I get Adidas vibes from it, strangely. So
I would almost rather have Adidas vibes because I think Adidas puts out great kits.
Fabrics are nicer also, let's just say. But yeah, I'm not feeling like I need to rush out and get this shirt. Let's put it that way.
I can't stop thinking about how weird this kit's going to look with white shorts in the Champions League. Like it's going to look.
Well, it depends on what they do. It depends on what they do with the shorts. I haven't seen what the actual shorts look like yet.
So I would imagine they're just going to be white shorts like always. But
no. I mean like the piping and like how they have it set up and like what the like tertiary color looks like. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's going to look like a training kit, Andrew, because it's a fucking training kit. The one thing that I will say good about it is if they're going to do a centered badge, at least they did a centered logo. The concept of a centered badge with the logo on the left, like they did a couple years ago, is stupid.
Correct. I would agree with that, although I think the whole thing is stupid. I
don't disagree. And they're doing it to you twice this year. The other one's yellow. So.
Oh, okay. I see. I haven't read ahead. I haven't looked ahead at all on. Yeah. I do know the away is a black that I've heard. Okay,
dude,
but
I cannot wait to buy that kit.
Okay, so the black one's supposed to be good. Well, and that's we were talking a little bit before we started recording about how most of the time in the last let's say the last 5 to maybe 8 years, Spurs are putting out like one of their 3 kits are a good kit, and the other 2 are just kind of. And we can probably put this in the crap category because I don't love this. The one thing I do like that we're gonna have next season in the Champions League is this bad boy right here.
Yes. That on the black kit, bro.
That patch, UEFA Europa League 2025 winners will be on the sleeve. And I don't know. I think that's just for Champions League games because it's the Champions League patch.
Oh yeah.
So that's fine and dandy. I love that, but I'd love to get some more patches, some more winners patches going forward. That's really what all of this is about. It's not about how you look, but boy, the patch will look nice on a really bad kit. But that's about all we can say about it. So the patch is cool. I'm down with the patch, and I'm also really down. I know people are gonna be shocked, but I'm down with flaunting it. Like, yeah, you know how we got here? We finished 17th and we won the Europa League. That's how we got here. Fucking deal with it. That's how I feel. Like, stick it right on the patch and remind everyone that the only reason we're here is because we won something.
Dude, and that's exactly it. Is remind, and I love the one thing that I will say about the branding that the club did when we won. I thought that winners everywhere was an exceptional touch because it was just a giant fuck you to anybody who ever talked about the fact that we couldn't win anything. And so the fact that we're taking this in to the Champions League with everybody looking at us going, "Oh, you don't deserve to be here." It's yeah, we fucking do. And this is how. I love that. And that on a black kit is going to look crazy. I can't wait. And the club is selling it too.
I am efforting to get the goalkeeper kit up here real quick because Caroline just mentioned to me that that's out. We are going to look at
fuchsia?
That right now.
It reminds me, it's the same pattern as the Norway kits that they put out this year, if you know what I'm talking about. But it's just all highlighted.
It's like a gradient. This is a bad photo if you're watching on YouTube. I'm trying to get a better one here, but it's like a gradient. It's a few different colors. There's a lighter pink and it goes into a darker pink as it gets to the sleeve. But I like this. Like, this is a really nice kit. And I'm totally on board with this one.
Yeah, I feel like I have a complaint, like a general complaint about goalkeeper kits, and that poor goalkeepers, they do not get like unique kits for their club. You know, it's like complete template across the board. So other clubs will have this exact same shirt on their goalkeeper. And I think that's kind of lame. But I do think this color looks great on Vic. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's nice. I actually had not seen this until you just shot me a message and said you have the goalkeeper kit, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize, because this is how much I care at this point, guys.
I'm more excited about this than the home kit. So
well,
Facts.
there's good reason. It's a much better looking kit than the home kit. Like, there's good reason for that. So, yeah, totally. I went, oh, there we go. I don't know what I did, but I finally got like the image that I've been trying to get all along on the screen, and there it is, Vic.
with the blue steel
With the steel
expression.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, that's kit talk for the week. I'm sure we'll see the other ones, and we'll be more on board. But yeah, the home kit is not my favorite, and that's okay, because it doesn't have to be for everyone. So just like, discussions of firing managers doesn't have to be for everyone, but we've done that as well this week. I do think that's going to do it for this another extended edition of the Tottenham Depot. We went long last week. We've gone long this week, and why wouldn't we? Because Tottenham are just making all the news and giving us all the things to talk about. So that's what they do. Be sure to check out our episodes on your YouTube page. I've mentioned it a few times, but youtube.com/Tottenham Depot is where you can watch every episode of the Tottenham Depot and leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice. It really does to help spread the word about the show. We'll be back next week. Hopefully both the men and women have managers by then. I'm not
That'd be cool.
I'm not going to count on it, but I'm going to hope for it, because like I said, summer's happening, whether Spurs like it or not. Like, things are going to start happening very, very quickly. I'm actually I'm a little pissed. It doesn't look like Spurs are going to get any business done in this little early window where they could have done. The only business they've done is outs, obviously, and outs by way of managers. So we'll see what comes of it. But you can follow Todd at TC_Kasho. You can follow Caroline at CG Stefko, and you can follow me at A Stefka. Otherwise, follow us at Tottenham Depot on all the socials. We will talk to you next week. This has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.